When I confided in my husband about a deeply personal part of my past, his reaction was completely unexpected. Throwaway account. So, I, F23, and my husband, M28, have been together for 5 years now, married for 2. He works in IT and is the only one working while I'm studying economy and work part-time on weekends, so we both contribute to the household. We've always been a very happy couple. Everyone seemed to be a little jealous of our connection as we were always also best friends. He's a very sweet, hard-working man who seems to love me and wants me to feel secure, sometimes in ways that I don't agree with, like putting down other women for looking a certain way. And I've talked about it to him, but he doesn't seem to know what the big problem is. Not sure if that's relevant. T.O. Rape. I've been raped when I was in high school, before we knew each other, by a classmate on a school trip. We barely knew each other, but one night he got into the women's bathroom when everyone was outside, besides me, and raped me and strangled me really badly, so I couldn't run away. After that, I went to the police, but nothing happens. The police dismissed it because they didn't believe me and said I couldn't just decide to ruin someone's life one day because of a whim. I still did have strangulation marks though. I recently decided to tell my husband everything since I finally got the courage and stopped being ashamed. Thank you, RI2X chromosomes. I sat him down yesterday and told him everything. After that, he put his face in his hands and then slapped me really hard. I could feel my tooth had been chipped. He then stood up, packed some of his clothes and left. I was crying the whole time and he only told me to shut the fuck up. I don't really know what to do. I didn't call him or anyone else. It's already morning but he hasn't come back. Any help would be appreciated on how to proceed. Appreciated on how to proceed. Edit. Thank you for all the advice and, honestly, I'm kinda torn up on how to proceed with this entire situation. I'm happy that a few people from my country have spoken up specifically so that they could help me since my knowledge of law is limited. Never thought I'd end up in a situation like this. Now I know it's better safe than sorry. I'm probably gonna post a separate update when the situation becomes clearer, but now I'm staying with my family temporarily since I don't have much money to my name. Thank you for anyone that's concerned about me. I honestly felt immensely happy reading that so many people care for a random stranger on the internet. Stay safe, people. Update. Since my update post has been removed. Hi. So over a week ago I posted about my husband slapping me after you know what. If anyone wants to read the post, it's still up apparently. It's gonna be a long and messy update since I'm really tired and want to write my thoughts down quickly. So, oh boy, the whole thing is just a big mess. Let me start with that first. After I wrote the Reddit post somewhere in the morning, the day after it happened and my husband left, I packed some of my stuff and left. Fortunately, none of my valuable things were there. The computer and apartment were his, and for those of you who were curious, no, we don't have kids. So that was the easiest part. I waited a few hours for a train and just went straight to my family house where my parents and older brother live with his wife. I told them everything that happened and that I had no idea why he could have done that since he was always sympathetic with me when it was getting hard, though never to this extent. My brother's wife works in court and knows quite a few people, so she said she would help me resolve this. I feel like she was fuming the most out of all of them. She's truly a great person. 2 days later, we all decided to go back to the apartment to get the rest of my stuff. Yes, 5 people went to get a suitcase or 2 of clothes lol. He was not home and it seemed like he did not come back once after he left, which was weird. All the time, I was so nervous he would come back, my hands were shaking. I had to go to the toilet, because I could feel some things wanted to be freed really bad, to which my brother said, "Don't flush it, he deserves a last present." And so I did. I'm a petty bitch and so is my brother. Guess we really are family after all. But man, did that feel satisfying? I feel gross writing about it though, lol. My university is going to be fully online this year, which is my last year of uni, so I don't have to go back to the city anymore, at least before graduation, and I can stay with my family for however long I want to. My uni also helped me get a therapist which I'm meeting, through Skype, in a few days, so that's quite exciting, because I'm very eager to go guilt-free and finally feel relieved. As for my marriage, he finally did call me after about 5 days I think and was asking where I went. I told him to not worry about it since I'm gonna file for divorce and hope he's not gonna cause trouble. I managed to keep cool while talking to him and I'm so proud of myself. Guys! He started crying and saying that hitting me was a mistake and he's very sorry for disrespecting me like this. I told him I don't care because there was no reason for him to lay a finger on me. I also asked him why he'd do this, to which he replied something along the lines of, "I don't know, I suddenly got very angry and was frustrated that you didn't tell me before that you'd slept with someone else." I hope you've caught it, because he said slept with. Right then I was so done, I started half yelling half talking through the phone. I told him, Why would that even matter? I'm married to you, and apparently, he asked me at the beginning of our relationship if I'd slept with anyone else before and answered him with no. Now I'm mad, so I yelled I was fucking raped, sex does not equal rape, you shithead? And added that my lawyer will probably be contacting him very soon, so it's best for him to not call me at all and be compliant. He tried to backfire saying that it was not the main reason, but I just put my phone down. Some of you have suggested that he might have thought that I was a pure teenager when he started hitting up on me, and I didn't want to believe it because he was never really religious or anything. But here we fucking go. I'm also wondering what other reason he tried to come up with to ease things up. I also got my tooth fixed at the dentist's. I was able to visit the next day somehow and it's now like new. The dentist asked me how it happened because it was in a really bad state. I told him I was hit, while not thinking anything about it. He kinda gasped at that moment and I said I was sorry for saying something so unnecessary. Afterwards, he told me he used better materials and I didn't have to pay him for them, only for the service, and wished me luck. I was kinda embarrassed, but honestly, I was so done with it, and the amount of support I got from my family, Reddit, and even the dentist guy was immeasurable. I stopped feeling sad about everything. I didn't take it to the police yet. I don't know if I will, honestly, because I really don't want to think about him ever again and the whole situation is so exhausting. I will, though, be divorcing him very soon and possibly getting a restraining order. I don't know how it all works yet, but my brother's wife has my back, so I believe it'll all go well. Thank you to everyone for any advice and my fellow Polish Redditors who happens to find this post and came with some specific tips on what I could do, hence why I'm getting a therapist for free. Take care and stay safe. Now to the next story, story 2. My mother and sister crashed my wedding, insisting I give up my fiancé because they believed he was perfect for my sister, not me. Hello, everyone, I'm 25, female, and I'm furious. I'm very confident this will be my last conversation with my family, and I was wondering if you would do the same if you were in my situation. The main characters in this narrative include, I am 25 years old and female. My sister Ellie, 23, female. My mother, 47, female. Growing up, my mother was considerably closer to Ellie than to me. I think it was because I was far more manly than either of them. I had diverse interests and goals. I'd been playing soccer since middle school, and as I got older, I became interested in other sports such as volleyball and swimming. I eventually won a soccer scholarship, allowing me to attend a university 4 states away. While I was away at university, Ellie decided she did not want anything to do with further education. She dropped out of high school and was proud of it. She had been more concerned with romantic affairs than academics since her early high school years. Somewhere along the way, my mother encouraged her to keep doing this. In my mother's opinion, the finest thing a girl can do is have multiple men fawning over her, because life is easier with admirers than when you settle down with just one person. My parents split up due to my mother's strong beliefs about what a guy should be and how he should behave. My father was emotionally mature and available, which she found overwhelming. When they parted, I was the only one who remained in contact with my father. Ellie, on the other hand, believed all Mom had told her. She concluded Dad was a sissy and that she'd be better off without him around. She stated he wasn't much of a father to us anyway. I cannot say I agree with her. I tried to sway her mind about our father, but she had no desire in that relationship. In her opinion, he had dug his grave by deciding to burden Mom with his emotional needs. Her weird beliefs about masculinity and the male mindset troubled me. Deep down, I suspected she was developing a corrosive, nearly man-hating worldview as she grew older. While Ellie was bouncing from one romantic connection to the next, I was working on my undergraduate degree. I had a lot on my plate, balancing my studies and my sports scholarship, so I simply didn't have time to date. That fact concerned Ellie and Mom tremendously. In their perspective, what do I value if I can't marry someone wealthy? It was weird hearing them utter those things. My mother even went so far as to give me bad dating advice, including manipulative tactics. How I should target men's weak points, console them, and then use it as power to dominate them. She claimed that I needed to control someone in order for them to stay with me, select me, or like me. Her statements seemed so weird to me. Her advice was very strange. I thanked her for her advice, but never followed it. When I was 22, I met someone through my master's program. We began dating, and when I was 24, we became engaged. Because of my mother's weird beliefs about what a woman must do to keep a man, I believed it would be best to conceal my boyfriend's presence until we were engaged. My father, however, was completely aware of my relationship. He had met my fiancée several times before our engagement. After alerting my father of our engagement, I felt it was time to present my fiancée to my mother. So I did. The meeting did not proceed as anticipated. When I initially brought him home, my mother was overjoyed, but not because he was my fiancé. Oh no. Mom did not even allow me to finish introducing him. I had hardly mentioned his name when she interrupted and stated that I had finally come around as a sister, because he was the ideal man for Ellie. She said I should have told her and Ellie about him sooner. I was too astonished to speak. So was my fiancé. We both sat there, watching Ellie parade around in tight clothing, not even attempting to conceal the fact that I was right there. This was incredibly unacceptable behavior, even if my fiancé was not my fiancé and was simply a buddy. After 5 minutes of watching this drama develop, I snapped out of my amazement and resolved to correct the record. I introduced him as my fiancé and showed them my ring. And for once, I'd appreciate it if you cared about my happiness rather than Ellie's. Hearing this, my mother finally took a good look at my fiancé's face. After glancing at him for a few moments, she announced that she could not offer her blessing to this marriage. I couldn't believe what I heard. I was shocked. I got hurt. I was experiencing too many emotions at once. Instead of disputing, I accepted her opinion, grabbed my fiancé's hand, and left the house. Later, my fiancé asked if I still wanted to marry him, knowing how important my mother's comments were to me. I said, "I love you. I see a future with you. And if I want to marry, it will be with you and no one else." With that, we continued with our wedding planning. After nearly 2 months of planning, my wedding day finally arrived. I was in my wedding gown, feeling on top of the world. Everything was perfect. My father came to escort me down the aisle, but then, a disturbance. My mother and Ellie barged in, disregarding the security. Ellie was wearing a wedding gown that had belonged to my mother. My mother called out to me, asking that I cancel the wedding. She said, "You should not marry your fiancé." And why? Because Ellie deserves it more than I do. My mother believed Ellie deserved a good-paying husband who could care for her while she pursued her dream of becoming a homemaker. Unlike me. Unlike the masculine woman that I am. My mother suggested that the outfit would look better on Ellie because she has developed biceps and triceps, and the only thing preventing her from being a male is a lack of facial hair. Mom asked my fiancé, "What type of woman do you want in your arms? A lady who is obedient or a woman who would rather spend her leisure time chasing a ball?" It wounded, embarrassed, and humiliated me to hear such comments from my own mother. I could not even defend myself. My mother viewed my silence as a show of submission and ordered me to step down from the altar, allowing Ellie to take my place. That's when my fiancé stretched out and took my hand. He turned to my mother and urged her to go, as she and Ellie were not welcome here. He stated he wanted to spend the rest of his life with me, a lady he could play soccer with, rather than Ellie, whom he didn't know and didn't like. Mom's face fell. She turned to me and asked me to say something. All I could say was, "Leave." My mother walked out of the event with a nasty smile on her face, barely covering her disdain for me. Ellie trailed behind her, clearly unhappy. I could barely concentrate on the ceremony after that. The wedding was postponed for half an hour while I attempted to settle myself. Once I felt better, I was finally able to marry the love of my life. When I was alone after the wedding, I burst into tears. I don't understand why my mother did what she did. Is it improper for me to want to marry despite being a manly person? I do not comprehend. Update 1. Hello, everyone. Thank you for all your kind sentiments in my DMs and comments. I haven't had time to respond to everyone, but I assure you that I have read them all, and I thank you all for taking the time to read my tale. Yes, my mother and I were never close due to my passion in athletics. Ellie and Mom look a lot more alike than I do. I resemble my father. After my parents parted, Mom attempted to poison us against Dad. She succeeded with Ellie but not with me. Mom also saw Dad was present during the ceremony, which I don't think she was pleased about. I've received a few texts from my mother, but I haven't had the confidence to open them. Update 2, I opened the messages. My mother laments the fact that I married someone who should have been perfect for Ellie. In her perspective, I ruined Ellie's chance to live the dream life she had always desired by marrying him. I'm not sure why she just cares about Ellie's happiness, not mine. When I challenged my mother about this, she responded, "I did not raise you to be such a hateful person who enjoys being envious of others." I couldn't make much sense of what she said, but I knew it was meant to harm me. I had no reason to sit and suffer what she was spewing at me, so I chose to block her. I've never considered taking such dramatic measures. However, standing where I am today, I believe that is the best course of action. I have temporarily blocked my mother. Update 3. Since I blocked my mother, Ellie has decided to trash me on the internet. She made multiple posts portraying me as the villain who took her lover, which was not the case. Fortunately, My father and his side of the family were aware of my continuous relationship with my husband, so they did not accept her words. My mother's side of the family was a very different story, but that's okay. I am not too concerned about it. I've blocked her as well, and I have no plans to unblock her. Mom's family contacted me, and I described the issue to several of them. Those who believed me were unblocked, while those who did not believe me were blocked. I have no regrets, and that is it. I want to have a good life with my husband, and I'm not going to allow my toxic family spoil it. Wow, your mother has some very antiquated and harmful values. You deserve so much more. I can't comprehend why she thought it was right to do what she did. You are NTA for blocking her, by the way. NTA. You should block your mother, Ellie, and anyone else who believes what they did is acceptable, because it is not at all. Now to the next story, story 3. I worked 2 jobs to fund my sister's life, but she called me a loser. I cut her off, and she spiraled. Now, she's stuck while I moved on. When my younger sister, Lauren, was accepted to her chosen college, the entire family celebrated as if it were the greatest success of all time. My parents were beaming with delight, and Lauren was already discussing her future career plans. Meanwhile, I stood in the corner, quietly calculating how everything was going to turn out. My parents did not have enough money to pay for her schooling. They made this evident when they began dropping hints during family chats. Lauren is so smart, but college is so expensive these days, my mother would add, as if I didn't realize where this was headed. I did not have much. I was working as a mechanic and saving money for a house, but Lauren was my sister. I wondered, what's the harm in helping? So I pitched in. It began with simple purchases, textbooks and groceries, but it quickly escalated. I soon began paying her rent, electricity, and even nights out when she wanted to unwind. She always had an explanation when she asked for money. I'll pay you back when I graduate. Or, Mom and Dad just can't help right now. What made matters worse was that my parents treated me as if I was required to assist. Family takes care of family, they'd say, as if I wasn't already straining my back working 2 jobs to support them. Lauren, meanwhile, pretended that the world revolved around her. She'd share images of expensive dinners and weekend getaways, beaming as if she wasn't living on my dime. I kept telling myself it was only temporary. I felt it would all be worthwhile after she graduated. But, deep down, I was beginning to resent the idea that my life was on wait while hers was racing full speed ahead, and I was footing the price. I believed things would improve once Lauren got into her college schedule. I imagined she'd recognize how much I was doing for her and express her gratitude. However, her entitlement only increased. Her spending habits were the first clear clue. While I was skipping meals and working late nights to pay her rent, Lauren was displaying her new clothing on social media, designer purses, trendy shoes, and elegant dinners that I could never buy for myself. At first, I attempted to rationalize. Perhaps she has a part-time job. Perhaps she was simply overdoing it for looks. But when I approached her about it, she simply shrugged it off. Everyone at school dresses like that, she told me. I don't want to look like I don't fit in. It wasn't just her attitude toward money, it was everything. She treated me like a walking ATM, never asking how I was or if I any assistance. My folks were not any better. Every time I tried to express how much I was struggling, they'd guilt me into being silent. She's your sister, my mother would explain. She's building a future. You should be proud to help her. But it wasn't just helping, it was sacrificing. My weekends were gone, as were my money, and that house I had always wanted. Forget it. Meanwhile, Lauren couldn't be bothered to write a thank you card. Instead, she contacted to complain about her teachers, her homework, or her flatmates. She never inquired how I managed to work 2 jobs simply to keep her afloat. The resentment I'd suppressed began to rise. I was weary of being treated as if my life didn't matter as long as hers was progressing. The tipping point came when Lauren casually stated that she was considering studying abroad for a semester. She didn't even question if I could afford it. She simply assumed I could handle it. I think it would be such a great experience, she added over the phone, her voice light and carefree. The program costs a little more, but it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, right? I sat there, grasping the phone and trying to understand what she had just said. I could barely cover her usual expenditures, and now she wants me to pay for a semester abroad? When I brought it up with my parents, expecting they would finally see sense, they doubled down. This is an incredible opportunity, my mother stated. You'll figure it out. You always do. I was floored. No one acknowledged how hard I worked. There is no care for my welfare. Just the expectation that I would continue to sacrifice. Because, obviously, that was my position in the family. At the same time, Lauren's actions became impossible to ignore. She'd phone to whine about the most minor things, like how her roommate had borrowed her shoes or how the campus cafeteria didn't have real lattes. She also started making subtle barbs at me. She'd laugh at how I was always working and say I was married to my job. "She doesn't appreciate you," a coworker said one night while I was complaining during a break. "You bend over backward, and she acts like you owe her." For the first time, I began to question whether they were correct. Family dinner was intended to be an informal gathering. My parents invited me over to catch up, and Lauren had returned to town for a break from school. I didn't want to go, but I believed I could handle a few hours. When I arrived, the situation was already tight. My parents were hovering over Lauren, inquiring about her classes, social life, and whether she needed anything else for school. I sat silently, hoping for someone to ask how I was doing. But, of course, that never occurred. Lauren brought up the study abroad opportunity again at dinner. She raved about how great it would be and how everyone she knew was doing it. Then she looked directly at me and said, "I hope you're ready for a little extra work, big brother. These programs don't come cheap." I froze. I could not believe she had the nerve to say it in front of everyone as if it were a done thing. "Maybe you should get a part-time job," I suggested, attempting to keep my tone light. Lauren laughed. "Me? A part-time job? That's funny. I'm too busy with school." That was it. The final straw. I set down my fork and glanced at her. "You're joking, right? You think I'm just going to keep funding your lifestyle forever while you sit around doing nothing?" The room went silent. My folks looked at me as if I'd swore at the dinner table. Lauren's jaw dropped, but she soon recovered. "What's your problem?" she demanded. "You've always been so bitter? Just because your life isn't going anywhere doesn't mean you have to take it out on me." That hit me like a punch to the belly. After everything I had done for her, sacrificing my time, money, and goals, was this how she saw me? A failure? Her words hung in the air like a smack to the face. I could feel my blood boiling, but I was not going to give her the last word. "Bitter?" I asked, leaning forward. "You think I'm bitter because my life isn't going anywhere?" "Lauren, my life isn't going anywhere because I was too busy funding yours." My parents quickly sprang to her defense. "That's inappropriate," my mother responded, her tone stern. "You're her brother. It's your job to support her." "My job?" I repeated with a sour laugh. When did it become my job to work 2 jobs so she could live in luxury? When did it become my job to sacrifice my entire future so she could have hers handed to her on a silver platter? Lauren crossed her arms and rolled her eyes. "Oh, there it is," she mumbled. "The martyr routine." That was it. I was finished. "You know what?" I asked, rising up. "Go ahead and call me a failure, Lauren. But at least I worked for everything I have." "What have you done?" "Nothing. You sit around spending my money while pretending you're better than me." I turned to my parents. "And you two are no better. You've enabled her selfishness at every turn, and I'm done playing along. I'm not paying for anything anymore, not her rent, not her tuition, nothing." The silence was terrible. Lauren's face turned pale, and for the first time, she appeared genuinely shocked. "You can't do this?" she exclaimed, her voice cracking. "How am I supposed to live?" "Figure it out," I remarked as I grabbed my jacket. "I've been doing it for years. Maybe it's time for you to learn." I left the dinner feeling angry and relieved. For the first time, I stood up for myself. But I knew the consequences were coming. It didn't take very long. The next morning, my phone was inundated with texts and calls. Lauren came first. She began sending passive-aggressive messages. "Thanks for ruining dinner. Hope you feel good about leaving your own sister out to dry." When I did not answer, the guilt trip started. "You're really going to leave me like this? After all I've been through?" I disregarded all messages. If she wanted to play the victim, she could do so without me. Then my parents became involved. My mother called first, her voice oozing with displeasure. "I don't know what's gotten into you," she told me. "Lauren needs your help. She's your sister." "She's been my financial responsibility for years," I replied. "It's time for her to grow up and take care of herself." My father wasn't much better. He called later in the day. "You're being selfish? You're punishing her for no reason. What's she going to do now?" "Get a job," I stated bluntly. "Like the rest of us." The true kicker came later that week, when I received a call from Lauren's landlord. Apparently, she had informed him that I was the one who paid her rent. When the payment did not go through, he came directly to me. "She's not my problem anymore," I informed him. "You need to talk to her." Lauren must have taken that chat as a wake-up call, since a few days later she showed up unannounced at my flat. She appeared unkempt and scared, a far cry from the confident, entitled lady I was accustomed to seeing. "You can't just cut me off," she exclaimed as I opened the door. "Yes, I can," I answered, leaning against the doorframe. Lauren stood there, moving her feet like a child caught in a lie. She was not used to hearing no from me or anyone else. "You don't understand," she said, her voice increasing in desperation. "If you don't help me, I'm going to lose my apartment. I can't just move back home. Mom and Dad don't have room for me." "Not my problem," I replied firmly. Her jaw fell. "Not your problem. You're my brother. And for years I've been more than that," I said, stepping forward. "I've been your safety net, your bank, your excuse to avoid growing up. I worked 2 jobs so you could live your dream, and the one time I asked for respect, you called me a failure. So no, Lauren, it's not my problem anymore." She blinked, as if unable to comprehend what she was hearing. "I didn't mean it like that," she mumbled. "I was upset, and I just wasn't thinking." "You never think," I said back. "You never think of anyone but yourself. You used me. You used Mom and Dad. And now you're panicking because you finally have to face the consequences." Then she started crying. Big theatrical sobs may have worked on someone else. But I wasn't falling for it anymore. "You're not going to guilt me into changing my mind," I told you. "You need to figure this out for yourself. Get a job. Budget your money. Do whatever it takes, but leave me out of it." She didn't like the answer. "You're being cruel," she said, wiping away tears. "You're supposed to help the family. That's what family does." "No," I replied, my voice firm. "Family supports each other. They don't take advantage of each other and call it love. And until you figure that out, don't bother coming back here." I shut the door, interrupting whatever apology she was about to give. For the first time, I felt like I had power over my life. After closing the door on Lauren, I braced myself for the consequences. She was not the sort to suffer in silence, and I knew she'd attempt to make this into a sob story for our parents. They called me the next day, enraged. Mom began with her typical guilt trip. "How could you do this to your sister?" she insisted. "She's struggling, and you left her when she needed you the most." I did not hold back. "Struggling?" I scoffed. "She's been living off my paycheck for years while acting like she's the queen of the world. Maybe it's time she learned what struggling actually looks like." Dad spoke up next, accusing me of being callous and ungrateful for everything they had done for me. This part had me laughing. "Ungrateful?" I asked. "You're kidding, right? I've been funding Lauren's lifestyle while you two sat back and cheered her on like she was the next big thing. Meanwhile, I've been working my ass off just to keep her comfortable." The more I laid it out, the more relaxed they were. By the end of the call, they had nothing to say but that I was tearing the family apart. Lauren's reaction was stunning. She bombarded her social media with vague remarks about how some people only care about themselves, and the agony of being let down by those closest to you. She even had the guts to set up a GoFundMe page for her rent, claiming she was blindsided by an unexpected expense. Her buddies expressed phony concern, wondering if there was anything they could do to help. However, donations came in very slowly. Apparently, people weren't as enthusiastic about her lifestyle as she had planned. Meanwhile, word of the drama circulated rapidly throughout the family. My aunt called to report that she had heard I was being unreasonable. However, as I described the circumstances, she rapidly changed her tune. "She really expected you to keep paying her rent?" she questioned, shocked. "Welcome to my world," I responded. After my parents arrived at my door, I realized how far this scenario had progressed. Lauren's entitlement was no longer the only issue. The entire family was enabling her, treating her problems as if they were mine to fix. They did not stop with guilt. My mother began to disseminate the story that I had failed Lauren and the family. Suddenly, cousins and relatives I hadn't spoken to in years started responding with messages like, "It's not fair to let her struggle," or "Family comes first." Lauren's mask of control, however, began to erode with time. I found out from common friends that she had moved back in with my parents after getting evicted. Of course, that wasn't sufficient for her. She made it apparent that she expected to be coddled there as well. One acquaintance informed me that she had overheard Lauren moaning about the food at home. "She's mad that her parents don't cook her real meals," my friend added, chuckling. "She even joked that they should hire someone to take care of her, since you're not around to do it anymore." Hearing this only strengthened my determination to terminate ties. If my family wanted to encourage her behavior, it was their decision. But I wasn't going to keep exhausting myself for someone who couldn't even express fundamental gratitude. Lauren's downward spiral continued. She moved back home with my parents, who treated her like a helpless kid. They catered to her every desire, spending what little funds they had left to support her lifestyle. Meanwhile, they continued to blame me for her condition, as if I had committed some awful crime by cutting her off. I learned from family that Lauren was still spreading lies about me, telling anyone who would listen that I had abandoned her during a tough period. She cleverly left out the bit where she had been leeching off me for years, flaunting her status as if it were her birthright. Her demise, however, was not just financial, but also social. Word of her GoFundMe fraud spread, and the same people who used to accompany her for lavish dinners now avoid her calls. Without me picking up the tab, she had nothing to give them. My parents called me in a panic, and that was the turning moment. Lauren apparently ran up credit card debt in their name, exceeding the limit to fund a shopping spree. They begged me for help, stating they couldn't make the payments on their own. I couldn't help laughing. After defending, aiding, and vilifying me, they had the arrogance to crawl back. "This is your mess to clean up," I informed them forcefully. "You chose to support her, you chose to ignore her behavior, and now, you're dealing with the consequences." For once, they did not dispute. Perhaps they recognized that I wasn't going to swoop in and save her like I had done so many times before. That was the last I heard from both of them. I moved on with my life, focused on my future instead of being weighed down by their incessant turmoil. It took years to mend the harm they had caused, but I emerged stronger for it. Lauren, the last I heard, was still living with my parents, trapped in the same loop of entitlement and excuses. Part of me felt terrible for them, bound by their selfishness. But mostly, I was relieved. They'd made their bed. Now they could lie in it. Now, on to the next story, Story 4. Ostracized over my inheritance, I sought peace but faced humiliation. Furious, I cut off my sister's rent, exposing my parents' manipulation. I arrived for a family meal, but they remarked, "We weren't expecting you, go away loser." I replied, "Okay. But from now on, you'll be paying my sister's rent." They begged but it was too late. I did not want to go at first. Why would I, given what had happened in the previous years? But something inside me didn't want to hold the hatred forever. My father was turning 57, and while I wasn't their favorite person, I figured I could be the larger man and at least show up. Things had gotten awful ever since I acquired my grandfather's estate. Grandpa and I were close. I spent a lot of time with him while growing up. He was often telling me stories about his early troubles, how he had to fight for all he has. I believe he saw something of himself in me, which is why he left me a large sum of money when he died. This decision did not sit well with either my parents or my sister Olivia. They were outraged that Grandpa had not left them anything, as if it were my fault or something. I attempted to explain that I had nothing to do with it, but they would not listen. After that, nothing remained the same. They treated me as an alien, as if I had stolen from them. They were frigid at family gatherings. Sometimes they didn't even invite me. I maintained my distance. But this time, I decided to try and make things better. I purchased a bottle of my father's favorite whiskey, the costly variety he only drank on exceptional occasions. I even bought him a box of gourmet cigars. Maybe I was stupid to believe that a few nice gifts would change everything. But I had to try. When I arrived at her place, Olivia answered the door. She was the one person who had not fully shut me off. We weren't very tight, but we kept in touch here and there. "Hey, Jeffrey," she said, slightly astonished. "I didn't know you were coming." "Yeah," I responded. "I thought I'd show up for Dad's birthday." She paused for a moment before shrugging and letting me in. As I came into the living room, I noticed a group of family sitting talking and laughing. For a little while, everything seemed normal. But then I saw my parents. My mother's face became paler, and my father's attitude stiffened. The room became quiet. "You," my father growled. "What are you doing here?" I tried to remain cool. "I came to wish you a happy birthday. I brought some presents." He scoffed. "We didn't invite you." My mom shook her head. "Why are you even here? You always bring trouble. Just leave." I could feel my patience running out. I'd come here to make peace. And this was the reaction I received? I glanced around at the other family. They were uncomfortable, as if they were seeing something they weren't allowed to. "Look," I remarked, maintaining an even tone. "I'm not here to fight. I just wanted to celebrate with you." My father snorted. "Celebrate? You're nothing but a loser. You think a few gifts will make up for everything?" That struck a nerve. All those years of being treated as dirt, as if I didn't belong, came flooding back. I clenched my jaw, hoping to keep it together. But then my father pushed it further. "Get out, Jeffrey," he instructed. "We don't want you here." And that was all? Something inside of me cracked. Fine, I replied, my voice frigid. I'll go. But guess what? I've been paying Olivia's rent all this time because you couldn't be bothered to help her. Not anymore. That's on you now. Their expressions froze. It was as if they hadn't expected me to advocate for myself. My mother suddenly hurried forward. Wait, Jeffrey? No, I interrupted. I'm done. You don't want me here? Fine. But you'll regret this. I turned and walked out, leaving the home completely silent. As I approached my car, I could hear them cry from the front door, imploring me to stop. But I did not glance back. I got in and sped away, fury rising in my chest. I didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was certain. I wasn't going to be their punching bag longer. The following morning, my phone burst. Olivia had called me 6 times, left 3 voicemails, and sent numerous texts. I ignored her at first. I needed some distance to clear my mind after what occurred last night. But curiosity got the best of me, so I listened to one of the voicemails. Jeffrey, it's Olivia. What the hell is going on? Mom and Dad are freaking out, saying you cut me off. They're blaming me for everything. Call me back. I grumbled and threw my phone onto the bed. Of course, they blamed her. When things went wrong, they were usually the first to blame others. I still felt horrible for Olivia. It wasn't actually her fault. I had been assisting her with her rent for the past 2 years because our parents refused to aid her when she was in need. But I was not going to let them guilt me into continuing, especially after how they treated me. Olivia arrived at my apartment approximately an hour later. She did not even knock. She simply barged in. Jeffrey, what the hell have you been doing? She asked. Good to see you too, I murmured, crossing my arms. I'm serious, she snapped. Dad called all the relatives and told them you threw a tantrum at the party. Now half the family is pissed at me because they think I'm the reason you stopped paying my rent. I raised an eyebrow. Wait, what? He told them that? Yeah, she replied, throwing up her hands. They say I must have sided with you against them or something. Uncle Mark called me this morning and asked if I was plotting with you. It's crazy. This was new. I had not anticipated the rest of the family to become involved so quickly. I leaned back against the kitchen counter, trying to take everything in. Well, Olivia, I'm sorry you got caught in the middle, I told her. But I'm done being their scapegoat. They've treated me like crap ever since Grandpa's inheritance. They didn't even want me there last night. I'm not going to keep playing nice when all they do is insult me. She crossed her arms and stared at me. They could have at least talked to me first, you know. I need that money. I know, I admitted, softening my tone. But maybe it's time for them to take some responsibility. They're your parents too. Why should I be the one to keep you afloat while they sit on their hands? Olivia did not respond soon away. I could tell she was split. On the one hand, she knew I was correct. On the other hand, she was torn between her allegiance to me and the pressure from our parents. Eventually, she shook her head. This is going to get ugly, she grumbled. I'm ready for it, I said. And things did get ugly. Faster than I thought. By the afternoon, word had spread among the wider family. My cousin Megan, who always liked to play the role of mediator, called me. Hey, Jeffrey, she said cautiously. I heard about the fight last night. What's going on? I gave her the outline, omitting some of the harsher aspects. Megan listened carefully and sighed. You know they say you ruined the party, right? But honestly, a lot of people are on your side. Uncle Rob thinks your dad and mom crossed the line. And Aunt Lisa told them off for the way they treated you. This was surprising. Aunt Lisa normally avoided family turmoil, so her involvement must have irritated her greatly. Wow, I said. Didn't see that coming? Yeah, Megan replied. But Olivia called me earlier, and she's pissed. I think she feels like you threw her under the bus. I massaged my temples. This was turning into a full-fledged family feud. A part of me felt bad. However, another part of me felt relieved. For once, I wasn't the only one feeling their fury. Maybe they'll finally realize how toxic our parents can be. Later that night, Olivia sent me a lengthy text message. She accused me of being selfish and leaving her when she needed me the most. It stung. But I knew she was just acting out under pressure. I did not respond. 2 days later, things erupted again. My father showed up at my workplace. I worked at a downtown marketing business and was astonished to find him standing in the entrance. He wasn't even attempting to mask his rage. We need to talk, he stated bluntly. I'm working, I said, my voice calm. You can call me later. No, he replied. We're doing this now. I sighed and led him outside, He didn't spend any time lying to me. You embarrassed this family, he remarked. Do you realize how many people are turning against us because of your stunt? You think you're better than us now, don't you? Better than you? No, I replied. But I'm not going to let you treat me like dirt anymore. I came to your birthday out of respect, and you threw it back in my face. His eyes narrowed. You think you're entitled because of Grandpa's money? Without him, you'd have nothing. That's rich, I replied. You're the one who's bitter about not getting a share. This isn't about respect or family, it's about control. He did not answer immediately, but I could see the rage in his eyes. Finally, he added, You're going to regret this, Jeffrey. No, I replied firmly. You are. He stormed away without saying another thing. As I watched him leave, I understood this wasn't over. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally standing firm. A few days later, I learned of the impact from other relatives. Aunt Lisa called to complain about how my father had gone around attempting to turn the entire family against me. Apparently, he told everyone that I had betrayed the family and cut off Olivia as punishment. But, to my astonishment, some relatives did not believe the narrative. Uncle Rob had plainly told my father, You treated Jeffrey like garbage, didn't you expect consequences? Lisa stated that several others were also beginning to see through the act. They remembered how distant my parents had gotten since the inheritance incident. Some of them were now silently supporting me. However, not everyone was supportive. Olivia had gone all in on our parents, and she wasn't holding back. She posted a passive-aggressive rant on Facebook, which everyone knew was directed at me. Family is supposed to be about support, not conditions. Some people think they can just walk away when it's inconvenient for them. Must be nice to live with no responsibilities, some of us aren't so lucky. It required every ounce of willpower not to shoot back. My phone was buzzing with messages from cousins asking what was going on. The drama was growing like wildfire, and I was caught in the midst. Olivia returned to my house later in the evening. This time, she appeared fatigued rather than angry. She didn't even bother with greetings. Can we talk? She inquired. I nodded and invited her in. She sank down into the couch and moaned. This whole thing is a mess, Jeffrey. I have people calling me a traitor, others saying I'm too dependent on you. I can't win. What am I supposed to do? Olivia, I understand, I replied. But this isn't just about the rent. It's about the way they've treated me all these years. I came to Dad's party to make peace, and they humiliated me in front of everyone. You think I'm just going to roll over and take it? She gazed down at her hands. I know they were wrong, she said. But they're still our parents. I don't want to be in the middle of this fight. I could tell she was straining, caught between her allegiance to them and the comfort I had provided. I decided to be honest. Look, Olivia, I never wanted to make you choose sides. But I'm not going to let them walk all over me anymore. I've supported you because I care, not because I owe them anything. If they want to be responsible for you, let them. Her eyes were filled with frustration. You don't get it, she retorted. They won't help me. They never have. Without your support, I'm screwed. For a brief minute, I felt guilty. But then I remembered the years of insults. How they had regarded me like an outcast. I was not going to give up my mental health for those who did not appreciate me. I'm sorry, Olivia, I whispered quietly. But I can't do this anymore. She stood and shook her head. Fine. But don't come crying to me when this all backfires. She went without saying anything else. The following day, events took an unexpected turn. Uncle Rob called to ask if I could meet him for coffee. I agreed, curious to know what he wanted. When I arrived, he quickly got to the point. Look, Jeffrey, I know things have been tough with your parents, but I want you to know that you're not alone. A lot of us have seen the way they treated you. It's not right. Thank you, Rob, I replied, drinking my coffee. But I'm not sure what good it does. They're not going to change. Maybe not, he acknowledged. But I think it's time we stop letting them control the narrative. You don't have to fight this fight alone. He went on to say that other relatives were preparing to confront my parents about their behavior. I had not expected this. Most of them normally avoided family conflict, but this time they were taking a stand. That night, Aunt Lisa called me. We just had a meeting with your parents, she stated. It got heated. We told them they needed to apologize to you and start treating you with respect. Of course, your dad was stubborn as hell, but I think we got through to your mom a little. I was stunned. For years, I felt lonely, as if I were the only one who recognized how toxic my parents could be. The family was starting to push back against their actions. Still, I wasn't waiting for an apology. People, including my father, did not change overnight. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get weirder, Olivia sent me a message. It was short and mysterious. "We need to talk. Something's happened." Olivia's message made me nervous. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity got the best of me. I texted her back. "What's going on?" Her reply was immediate. "Come to Mom and Dad's. It's serious." Despite my better judgment, I drove over. I knew I was in an enemy country, but if something was truly wrong, I decided I should at least listen to her. When I arrived, Olivia met me at the door. She had a solemn expression on her face, as if she were bracing herself for something heavy. "They're in the living room," she replied softly. I followed her inside and found my parents sitting stiffly on the couch. They both appeared tight, but there was also a hint of something strange. My father motioned for me to sit down, but I remained standing. "All right," I replied, crossing my arms. "What's this about?" My mother sighed heavily. "We didn't want to tell you this way, but Olivia's in trouble. She's behind on her rent again," my father explained. "We just found out that she might be evicted." I looked at Olivia. She looked aside, biting her lip. "We can't let that happen," my father added. "She needs your help, Jeffrey, just until she gets back on her feet." I stared at them for a time, allowing the words to sink in. Something did not feel right. "How did you just find out about this?" I requested an explanation. "We got a call from her landlord," my mother stated hurriedly. "Too quick." Olivia shifted uneasily and avoided eye contact. My instincts kicked in. She had lied to me previously, and the whole situation reeked of manipulation. "So let me get this straight," I said carefully. "You're telling me that her landlord called you instead of her. And this is the first you're hearing about it?" My father's face tightened. "Look, Jeffrey, this isn't the time to question details. Olivia needs help." I turned to face Olivia. "Is this true? Are you behind on the rent?" She hesitated before shaking her head. "Number, I'm not behind." I felt my jaw clench. "Then why are you all playing this game?" Olivia grimaced. "They thought if you thought it was serious enough, you'd help again. That was it," I snapped. "Are you kidding me? You dragged me here with a fake emergency just to manipulate me into giving you more money?" I turned to my parents. "What is wrong with you people? You couldn't just ask me like normal people." "Jeffrey, don't overreact," my mother said, her tone defensive. "We were trying to protect Olivia. You're the one who cut her off." "No," I snapped back. "I cut you off. Olivia is a grown woman, and if she's in trouble, it's between her and me. But instead of coming to me honestly, you chose to lie. And you wonder why I want nothing to do with you." I turned to face Olivia. "You went along with this?" She seemed embarrassed. "They pressured me. I didn't know what else to do." "Well, congratulations," I replied bitterly. "You all just made things 10 times worse." I stormed out. But I wasn't finished. My rage only escalated on the way home. I'd put up with their manipulation for years, but this was the final straw. Did they want to play games? Fine. I was going to set the record straight. When I arrived home, I began phoning and messaging the family who had been in contact with me. I told them everything: how my parents had lied about Olivia being in danger, how they had tried to guilt me into assisting after humiliating me at the party, and how they had turned the entire situation into a circus. The answer was quick and nasty. Uncle Rob contacted me first. "You're telling me they made that whole story up? Jesus Christ. That's low, even for them." Aunt Lisa became very furious. "I'm done with them," she said. "They've played the victim card for too long. They're toxic, and they've been dragging this family into their mess for years." Word spread immediately. Within a day, the majority of the family understood the truth. The tide had completely changed. Relatives who had been on the fence began to cut off communication with my parents and Olivia. Nobody wants to deal with their deception and manipulation anymore. Olivia texted me and begged me to stop. "Please, Jeffrey, you're losing everyone. They say it's your fault." "My fault?" I said. "You brought this on yourself." For the first time in years, I felt genuinely supported. The family finally realized what I had been struggling with all along. My parents and Olivia attempted damage management, but it was too late. Nobody bought their justifications anymore. It was bizarre. For so long, I'd felt like the black sheep. But suddenly I was no longer an outcast. My parents were. Quite frankly, it seemed like justice. A week later, the aftermath was complete. My parents attempted to rally support from the rest of the family. However, their expectations had not been met. Megan told me that they had even sought out some of their more distant relatives, whom they hadn't spoken to in years, in an attempt to elicit sympathy. They called Aunt Marie, Megan remarked, laughing as she told me. You know, the one who never puts up with anybody's nonsense. Apparently, my father told her a sob story about how I turned everyone against them. He replied, maybe if you weren't such a control freak, your family wouldn't hate you. Then she hung up with him. Hearing that was more satisfying than I want to admit. But the big shock came when I discovered they were attempting to seek assistance from Uncle Peter, the wealthy individual who resided out of state. Peter had always been rather indifferent about family problems, but he was not ignorant. He had seen through my parents' games years before. I later learned that when they phoned him, he did not hold back. Peter told them straight out, Megan explained. Don't call me again. I'm not wasting my time with your theatrics. It was horrible. Every lifeline they attempted to clutch crumbled into dust. The people they formerly ruled had had enough. By the end of the week, my parents were almost completely separated. Olivia attempted to contact a few cousins, but none of them were interested in getting involved anymore. The entire family had cut her off. They're done, Rob informed me. No one wants to deal with their drama. It's just them now, Mom, Dad, and Olivia in their little kingdom of misery. I nearly felt bad for Olivia. Almost. She had decided to side with them and support their lies. Now she was stranded on their sinking ship. A few days later, my father contacted me. I pondered ignoring it, but ultimately chose to respond. I was curious to hear what he would say. Jeffrey, he said after a pause. We need to talk. Do we? I said, my tone icy. We made some mistakes, he said hesitantly. But you've made things worse by turning everyone against us. Don't you think it's time to end this feud? I laughed bitterly. You think this is my fault? You brought this on yourself. You lied to me. You humiliated me in front of my family. Now you're facing the consequences, and you want me to fix it for you. Jeffrey, please. We're still family. Funny, I said. You didn't care about your family when you called me a loser in front of everyone. Now that you have no one left, you want my help? I'm done. He tried to argue, but I hung up. That was the last time I spoke to him. It was the last time I spoke with any of them. I later learned through the grapevine that they were fighting to maintain appearances. With their family ties cut, they had no one to rely on. Olivia, who had previously relied on my support, was now discovering the hard way that our parents had no intention of assisting her. As for me, I felt free. For the first time in years, I was not burdened by their toxicity. I had my life back, and the support of loved ones who genuinely cared about me. My parents and Olivia were left in their self-created realm. There is no one to blame but each other. And honestly, I was fine with that. Now to the next story 5. My mother-in-law and sister called me a freeloader while I secretly paid their bills. They threw me and my son out. They'll regret it. My life was rather straightforward until Jake came around. I worked as a fitness trainer at a neighborhood gym, where I helped others get into shape. It kept me busy enough not to think about the absence of drama in my personal life. Everything changed the day Jake stepped into my gym. Hey, I'm looking to switch up my routine. Got any killer moves to start with? He inquired, his tone light but his stare serious. I gave him a once-over. He wasn't your typical rookie, unsure which machine to try first. No, he appeared to know his way around a gym but was looking for something more. Sure, I said, directing him to a set of weights. Let's see what you've got. The initial session turned into a week. Then a month. Our casual conversations became longer and more personal. Jake owned a modest family restaurant known for its authentic Italian cuisine. It's all about the sauce, he'd explain. And nobody makes it like my mom. He spoke about his mother with admiration and frustration, hinting at strong family ties. He surprised me one afternoon as we finished a particularly strenuous workout. Listen, Emily, I've been thinking, how about dinner at my place? You can meet my mom and try that sauce I keep bragging about. I paused, more out of surprise than disinterest. Yeah, why not? I'm curious if it's as good as you claim. Dinner was cozy. The food was fantastic, and the company was surprisingly comfortable. His mother, Anna, smiled warmly and laughed heartily, but her eyes seemed to size me up with each glance. Sophia, his younger sister, also stopped by. Her presence was more prickly, her remarks crisp and rapid. So, Emily, Sophia began, a sneer flashing on her lips as she examined the muscles I had worked so hard to develop. Jake tells us you're quite the fitness guru. Ever deal with hopeless cases, or do you just make the fit fitter? I chuckled and took her jab in stride. I believe everyone has potential. It's all about finding the right motivation. Jake became a continuous presence in my life. He consistently arrived at the gym at the same time and always found an excuse to talk a bit longer. You know, I never believed in fate or any of that stuff, he admitted one evening as we closed the gym together. But meeting you, maybe I was wrong. His statements were a combination of gruff charm and clumsy earnestness. It was refreshing. Despite the niggling voice in my head telling me to take it slowly, I found myself falling for him, hard and quick, like a rookie carrying too much weight without a spotter. One frigid evening, as we went to our cars, he came to a halt and turned to face me, his demeanor solemn. Emily, I'm not good at this fancy talking, and I don't have a smooth line to throw your way, but I like you, a lot. What do you say we make this official? It was abrupt and honest. No games. There will be no delaying the inevitable. That was Jake, straightforward and all in. I grinned as my heart pounded in my chest. I say yes. Let's see where this goes. And with that, I was no longer merely a fitness trainer at the neighborhood gym. I was Jake's girlfriend, and eventually, his wife. Moving into Jake's mother's house shortly after we married was not exactly what I had envisioned for our happily ever after. Jake explained that it was essential to him because of his familial links. But living with his mother, Anna, and sister, Sophia, was difficult from the beginning. They did not hide their unhappiness with my entering the family, and things became more tense by the day. The house was usually busy, yet I somehow ended up with more than my fair share of responsibilities. After a long day at the gym, I'd go home to an endless list of responsibilities. The old washing machine was a nightmare. It broke down so frequently that I half joked it was personal against me. Nobody else seemed to notice or care, particularly Anna and Sophia. I recall one evening after dinner, I was attempting to fix that dreaded machine when I overheard them conversing in the kitchen. She doesn't even know what she's doing, Sophia said, laughing without lowering her voice. Watch, she'll flood the basement next. Their laughter rang down the corridor, wounding more than I cared to confess. I bit my tongue and concentrated on the task at hand. It was not just the washing machine, it was everything. From cooking to cleaning, my efforts were simply another source of fun for them. Cooking was the worst. Italian cooking was revered in this household, and my attempts were deemed blasphemous. I tried to follow Anna's recipes exactly, but nothing seemed to work. Sophia lurked in the doorway one night while I was struggling with a seemingly simple spaghetti recipe. Is that supposed to look like that? She inquired, a sneer crossing her lips. It's nothing like Mom's. I gritted my teeth and stirred the sauce, which wouldn't thicken. Well, I'm trying my best here. Sophia snorted. Maybe your best isn't good enough. Did you ever think of that? I wanted to respond, to defend myself. But what was the point? Everything would remain the same. Jake appeared to shrink slightly whenever his sister or mother chastised me. He never stood up for me. His quiet was as audible as their laughter. Hey, Emily, just leave it, Jake said quietly later, attempting to avoid confrontation. It's not worth it. Dinner time was a hassle. I had arranged the dishes on the table in the hopes of having a tranquil supper, but it seemed like I was sitting in a lion's den. You know, in Italy, they'd probably ban you from the kitchen for this, Anna joked as she tried my food, and the others laughed along. Yeah, maybe stick to what you know, gym stuff, Sophia would say, distributing the salt as if it were a peace gift I did not deserve. I'd nod, grin, and swallow the hurt, my irritation simmering like the sauce that never worked out. Living with Jake's family made each day feel like a war I was unprepared for. As my pregnancy progressed, the housework, which already felt like it was all on me, became increasingly stressful. Instead of receiving assistance or sympathy from Anna and Sophia, I sensed their hostility grow worse. One afternoon, I attempted to sweep the living room while moving slower than normal due to my increasing tummy. Anna strolled in, regarded me for a bit, and then gave out a sigh of displeasure. Emily, you missed a spot over there, and look at how slow you're moving. This house is going to fall apart at this rate, she observed, pointing to a corner I hadn't yet arrived at. I straightened up, feeling a tightness in my back. I'm doing the best I can, Anna. It's a bit harder with the baby. She scoffed, shaking her head. In my time, we didn't let a little thing like pregnancy slow us down. You need to toughen up. The lack of sympathy hurt, and I bit my tongue to avoid snapping back. Sophia fared no better. Later that day, as I was folding laundry, she entered the room and began flipping through the clothing I had just carefully put. You do know these aren't folded right, don't you? They should be able to stand up on their own, like how Mom taught us. Here, let me show you again. She tossed the shirt she was holding back into the pile, undoing what I had previously done. Then, with precise movements, she refolded the same garment. I felt my frustration increase. Sophia, I appreciate the lesson, but I've folded clothes before. I'm not an idiot. She only raised her brow, a cold smile flashing on her lips. Could have fooled me. But hey, if you're okay with being mediocre, who am I to argue? Her words felt like a slap. For a time, I just stood there, watching her make my efforts appear futile. It was the same with cooking. Every dish I tried was met with criticism or downright ridicule, especially if I tried to create something Italian. One evening, I decided to try again, this time with a basic pasta dish that I believed I had nailed. Sophia arrived into the kitchen just as I was stirring the soup. "What's that supposed to be?" she inquired, staring into the pot with a doubtful expression. "It's spaghetti carbonara." "I thought it might be nice for dinner," I added, hoping for a difference in her typical gruff tone. She took a fork, tossed some pasta on it, and tasted it with an exaggerated distaste. "Nice? This is what you call nice? I wouldn't feed this to the dog, it's all wrong." I banged the pot's lid down slightly harder than necessary. "Well, it's what's for dinner. If you don't like it, you're welcome to make something else." Every day, the tension in the house increased, and Jake's absence exacerbated the situation. He was usually at the restaurant, always busy. When he was at home, he avoided all conflicts. When I tried to tell him about how his sister and mother treated me, he would just sigh and say something like, "I know it's tough, Emily, but try to hang in there. They'll warm up to you eventually, just give it time." After giving birth to my kid, I hoped things would improve. But the truth was quite the contrary. I had gained a significant amount of weight during my pregnancy, which became their new source of mocking. "Look at how much she's eating," Anna would chuckle as I tried to fuel myself for breastfeeding. "Are you feeding a child or a small army?" One day, as I was feeding my kid in the living room, I heard Sophia imitate a cow mooing from the kitchen. The sound cut through me. Tears stung my eyes. It was obvious that they considered me as nothing more than a cow, a utility for my son. I reached a breaking point. The relentless ridiculing and frigid treatment at home became unbearable. I needed a place for myself, where I wasn't just the scolded daughter-in-law or the underappreciated wife. That is when I decided to create my own YouTube channel and Instagram page. One morning, while Jake was at the restaurant and Sophia was out shopping, I put up my old camera in the corner of our tight guest room as my new impromptu gym. "I'm doing this," I whispered to myself while adjusting the angle. "For me. Not for them." I began filming easy training videos that could be done at home, particularly appealing to moms like myself who couldn't always get to the gym. Talking to a camera felt strange at first, as if I were addressing an audience who was interested in what I had to say. However, it soon became my haven. The first several videos were amateurish, with stiff commentary. "Hey everyone, it's Emily here, bringing you a quick 10-minute workout, perfect for busy moms, let's get started." But as time passed, my follower count increased, as did my confidence. I bought a better camera, watched online courses on lighting and editing, and my little project began to take shape, something wholly mine. Sophia barged into the room one afternoon while I was filming a low-impact exercise sequence for a new video. "What the hell are you doing?" she said, her gaze jumping from the camera to my. "You turning our home into your personal TV show now?" I paused the tape, my heart racing, not from the workout, but from the confrontation. "Yes, I am actually. It's something important to me. I need something of my own." Sophia grumbled and looked about with scorn. "You think you're some kind of star? Please. Get over yourself, Emily." Her words stung, but I was getting better at dealing with her jabs. "Well, it's not like I have your approval for anything else around here. I might as well do one thing I enjoy." Sophia rolled her eyes and marched away. But I didn't stop the camera for long. I resumed my session with a stronger voice than before. My digital profile rose, and so did the prospects. Brands began contacting me, offering free things to include in my movies. Then came the offers to sponsor posts. The first time a brand offered me money to promote their product, I was taken aback. "I can't believe they're paying me for this?" I said to Jake over dinner one night, eager to express my delight. "That's great, Emily," he said, his tone preoccupied by his restaurant issues. "Just keep it quiet, okay? Mom and Sophia don't need to know about this." As I returned to the dishes, a notice appeared on my phone. Another comment. Another follower. Another step away from their disdain, and toward something perfectly commonplace yet utterly mine. "You're doing amazing, Emily. Thanks for sharing your journey." The comment reads, "My channel was no longer just a hobby, It was a thriving business, generating more revenue than Jake's floundering eatery. Soon, I was sending him $2,000 each month to cover household expenses, making it appear like his contribution. Despite my accomplishments, Anna and Sophia continued to treat me as a freeloader. "She does nothing around here, just prances about making her silly videos," Anna would spit when she thought I was out of earshot. Sophia repeated her mother's thoughts, adding her own remarks about how I should do more housework, like a real woman. Then Jake's restaurant had a hard period. One evening, he approached me, looking more weary than I'd seen him in months. "Emily, the restaurant needs a cash injection, badly. Can you help out?" His eyes were begging. I did not hesitate, transferring $10,000 for what he described as urgent developments. He was truly thankful. But it wasn't long before he started begging for more. "Just another $55,000 for the bills this month," he remarked quietly, almost humiliated. I consented because I could afford it, and he was still my son's father, whom he adored. But, deep down, I sensed the imbalance deepening. Not just financially, but also in our relationship. Life at Jake's family home was always difficult. But it became awful when Sophia married and brought her husband, Mark, into our home. The house was full. And any sense of solitude or tranquility I had created for myself and my baby evaporated suddenly. Anna, never one to mince words, began calling me lazy and a parasite right in front of my face. "You do nothing around here," she'd say, as I struggled to balance my online business and keeping an eye on my baby. "Just taking up space." It didn't help that Sophia was expecting her first child, and Anna made it apparent that they wanted more space, hinting that my kid and I were in the way. "Soon there'll be another baby in the house, and we can't have freeloaders taking up space," Anna remarked one evening, her gaze drawn to my direction. The atmosphere became cooler, and then, just when things couldn't get much worse, Jake stated that he needed to leave town for a few weeks to handle essential restaurant affairs in another city. He packed up and went, hugging me and our baby goodbye, ignorant to the storm he would leave behind. I attempted to keep things normal by taking my son to school and finishing my videos in the park. However, the day everything actually went apart began like any other, until it didn't. After picking up my son from school, we walked home and spoke about his day. But when we turned the corner, my stomach fell. Our stuff was stacked up on the front doorway, including suitcases, bags of clothes, and even my son's toys. Confused and heartbroken, I rang the doorbell. Anna and Sophia approached the window with chilly looks, unmoved by the sight of a mother and kid stranded outside. They opened the door just enough to speak through, but not enough to let us in. "You need to find somewhere else to stay," Anna stated, her voice stern and uncompromising. I looked at her shocked. "What are you talking about? What about Jake? What will I tell him?" I asked, my voice rising with fear and rage. Sophia chuckled in a nasty, cutting tone. "Tell him whatever you want. He's not here to care, is he?" I frantically tried phoning Jake, but my calls remained unanswered. I had no alternative but to sink deeper into despair and hatred. With no other options, I gathered our belongings and secured a room at a neighboring motel. Sitting in that sterile, darkly lit room with my confused and upset son, I felt something shift inside me. This was more than simply a brief getaway. It was a forced eviction from a life I could no longer bear. I had just finished unpacking our things when my phone vibrated with a new message. It came from Sophia. That was strange, we rarely interacted directly, especially since the fallout. Her message was surprisingly cheerful. "Thought you might want to see what your beloved husband has been up to. A link is also provided." My curiosity piqued. My anxiety increased in my chest. I clicked the link. It redirected me to a social media page with images of Jake. But not on a work trip. The photos showed him cozying up to another woman, having candlelight meals and strolling down the beach with his arms wrapped around her. What is the newest photo's timestamp? Just yesterday. I sat there numb, my phone slipping slightly from my grip as the realization dawned on me. Jake wasn't only away for business. He was living a completely different life, without us. Anger, hot and bitter, welled up inside me. But before I could drown in it, I felt a gentle tug on my sleeve. "Mommy, are you okay?" My son's sweet voice, filled with sincere compassion, drew me back from the edge. I feigned a smile and scooped him up in my arms. "Yeah, buddy, I'm okay. Just a little tired, that's all." I sat there, staring at the television, a mix of rage and betrayal running through me. All this time, I had been the financial backbone for Jake's faltering restaurant and his ungrateful family, who had essentially discarded me and my baby like garbage. And here he was, leading a double life, at my expense. My phone buzzed nonstop for the next week with Jake's calls. When I eventually spoke, his voice was filled with false worry. "Emily, where are you guys? I heard about what happened. You should come back. We have bills to sort out, and the restaurant needs more funding." His statements made my blood boil, but I maintained a neutral tone. "Sure, Jake, we can discuss it. I'll come by tomorrow." "Great, I really think it's best to handle these things in person," he said, relieved. After hanging up, I felt a chilly determination descend over me. He had no idea I knew about his affair. And he had no idea I had no intention of being the forgiving wife who paid his debts. Tomorrow's meeting would be pivotal, and I was prepared. Dropping up my son at school that morning felt like the quiet before the storm. As I traveled to my mother-in-law Anna's house, where Jake, Anna, and my pregnant sister-in-law Sophia would be waiting, my stomach churned with nervousness and determination. When I arrived, Jake appeared relieved, if not delighted to see me. Unlike Anna and Sophia, whose expressions were filled with dissatisfaction. I quickly dug out the divorce papers from my suitcase and presented them to Jake. As he scanned the paperwork, his eyes widened in disbelief. Anna and Sophia smirked, believing it was their victory. But when I turned to face them, the smirk evaporated instantly. "Don't be too quick to celebrate," I cautioned, my voice calm but sharp. "You've been living off my efforts all this time." Jake's face dropped as he confessed to them. "The restaurant, it isn't doing well. It hasn't been for a long time." Anna and Sophia's joy faded, replaced by horror and rage. They immediately turned on him, their earlier delight transforming into wrath. "You've been keeping this from us?" Anna yelled. Sophia yelled, "How could you let this happen?" They were angry not at Jake's lies, but at the loss of their financial safety net. Sophia, the arrogant one, scoffed at me. "Well, since Jake makes less than you, he'll just have to file for alimony. How's that for justice?" Jake perked up and nodded enthusiastically, as if he had just discovered a way to win. I nearly chuckled at the stupidity. "That's where you're wrong, Sophia," I corrected, turning to face them both. "And Jake, you won't see a cent from me, not for alimony, not for anything." Jake's arrogant grin vanished. "What? That's not how this works." "Oh, but it is," I answered. "Because I know about the affair." His face lost its color. "How did you?" I tilted my head, pretending innocence. "Your sister sent me everything, pictures, dates, and locations." I gestured to Sophia, whose face had turned pale. "Thanks to her, I have all the evidence I need." The room burst in turmoil. A flurry of accusations, denials, and frantic explanations flew between them. I let them sink in their own muck for a time before I spoke out. "Oh, and one more thing," I said, my voice frigid. "I'm taking back everything I paid for." The room became silent. Every appliance, every piece of furniture, everything. As truth dawned on them, their arguments came to an end. I'd previously arranged for movers. Anna and Sophia worried as they began carrying away the refrigerator, washing machine, flat-screen television, and even the beautiful blender I had purchased for them last Christmas. "You can't do this?" Anna exclaimed, gazing helplessly. "We need those things." I caught her gaze, my tone steady but not harsh. "I did this? And I need them too." The movers kept working, cleaning out about half of the house. As I watched them remove the last of my belongings, I felt lighter than I had in years. A weight lifted from my shoulders. I was no longer obligated to this house, these people, or their deception. I returned my gaze to Jake, who appeared little and forlorn, his hopes for quick money dashed. "Take care of your sister and mother, Jake. That's your job now," I murmured politely, turning to go. As I walked away, I realized it wasn't just a physical departure. It was my final step out of their deceptive clutches, a step toward regaining my life and ensuring a better future for my son and me. Overall, the divorce was a relief rather than a hardship. I battled for compensation for Jake's adultery and obtained alimony for our son. My lawyer handled everything, making the procedure run as smoothly as possible given the circumstances. Jake's family's lives changed considerably as well. Without my financial backing, his restaurant went bankrupt and couldn't survive. The family house was sold to pay off debts, demonstrating their unsustainable lifestyle. Meanwhile, Anna and Sophia scrambled to contact me, their messages a combination of apologies and desperate begs for aid. Despite everything, I couldn't allow myself to be drawn back into their madness. I immediately blocked their numbers. Sophia's husband abandoned her, and now the entire family, Jake, his mother, his sister, and her child, is crowded into a small rented apartment. They created this difficult position for themselves. In contrast, life for me and Alex is improving. We've fallen into a comfortable routine in our own rented flat, which feels more like home every day. My YouTube channel and Instagram page have taken off, resonating with women, particularly new mothers, who are striving to get back into shape. Seeing the beneficial impact of my work has sparked a new idea. Create online fitness courses designed exclusively for postpartum mothers. I'm enthused about the possibilities and the opportunity to assist others who have been in my position. There was a lot to accomplish, but for the first time in a long time, the future appeared bright and full of possibilities. I had a deep feeling of serenity here, in our tiny sanctuary, with my sons laughing booming off the walls. We had made it through the storm. And now was our turn to shine. Now to the next story 6. My ex-wife tried to manipulate the court for alimony, but the judge exposed her lies. She faced legal consequences, and I blocked her. Have you ever sat in court and watched someone dig their own grave in real time? Because this is exactly what my ex-wife, Jessica, did. I should have known she was going to pull something. The entire divorce procedure had been a disaster. Delays, tantrums, and unnecessary fillings to squander my time. We wouldn't be here if she had put half the effort into our marriage as she did in making my life horrible. But when she walked into that hearing pregnant, I nearly laughed. Not because I felt the child was mine, I knew it wasn't, but because I could see the plan coming together in her thoughts like a cheap soap opera script. Jessica was hoping that the judge would see a poor, helpless, abandoned pregnant lady and order me to pay up. Forget the prenup. Forget logic. Play the compassion card to get a paycheck. I could already hear her prepared speech. Your Honor, I have a baby on the way, and I've been left with nothing. How am I supposed to survive? All while giving me sideways glances and waiting for me to squirm. Too awful for her. I don't play dumb, and I never lose. Jessica had underestimated me. She expected me to worry, become flustered, and even accept a settlement in order to avoid looking terrible in front of the judge. But she had no idea what I knew. She had no idea that I had already found her out months ago. Jessica was awful not only at marrying, but also at lying. And she had no idea that the judge was about to ask her a question that would unravel her entire story. Jessica strode into the courtroom with a smug expression. She played it flawlessly, with one hand on her belly and the other tenderly combing her hair behind her ear, as if she wasn't about to commit legal fraud. She even sighed dramatically as she took her seat, as if the entire process had exhausted her. I did not react. I didn't have to because, unlike Jessica, I wasn't going in blind. I was ready. My lawyer, Ethan, was also present. Ethan was the type of person who smiled in court but would completely destroy you with the law. I didn't like attorneys much, but after seeing him unravel Jessica's schemes over the last few months, I had to confess I was relieved he was on my side. Jessica, of course, had seen 3 different lawyers since we began this divorce. The one she had today was a newcomer, just out of law school and undoubtedly eager to win his first major case. I almost felt awful for him. Because here's the thing, Jessica had done this before. Not the pregnancy stunt, but the manipulation, the pretended grief, the "I'm just a struggling woman, Your Honor, please take pity on me" performance. Unfortunately, some people purchased it, including my mother. My mother called me about a week before the hearing. "Just settle," she urged, her voice full of tiredness. "You don't want this dragging on forever." I squeezed the bridge of my nose. "Mom, she doesn't get a penny. That is why we had a prenup." "She is pregnant though. Do you really want that on your conscience?" I nearly lost it. "This isn't my kid." Mom hesitated. "Are you sure?" I wanted to laugh. "Am I sure, Mom? She repeatedly cheated on me. I caught her." I halted. "Besides, do you know what the worst part is? If I really felt she was my child, she wouldn't have to pull this nonsense. I would be there. I would take care of them. That's the difference between us. She plans, while I take responsibilities." Mom went silent, then sighed. "I just don't want to see this get uglier." It was already ugly, but I assured her I'd handle it, which leads us back to the present. The judge entered, and the hearing began. Jessica's lawyer broke down in tears right away. "Your Honor, my client has been placed in an untenable circumstance. She's pregnant, unemployed, and struggling as a result of the emotional and financial pressure brought on by this protracted divorce." Jessica sniffled on cue. I did not even blink. Ethan waited patiently, letting the drama unfold. Then he stood up, cool and composed, prepared. "Your Honor, while we obviously sympathize with Miss Parker's plight, we need to clarify a few points before moving. First and foremost," he turned to Jessica's attorney, "who is the father of this child?" Jessica suddenly tensed. I knew the question was coming. Jessica did not notice it. She imagined the court would not scrutinize her pregnancy, that she could walk in, appear fragile, and walk out with a large check. However, legally, her pregnancy was only meaningful if I was the father. Her lawyer froze and said softly, "My client believes it is the petitioner's." I nearly laughed. Believes? Ethan did not even flinch. Does she believe so? There is no proof? Jessica shuffled uneasily. The judge's gaze narrowed. Miss Parker, have you had a paternity test done? Jessica's mouth opened, closed, and then opened again. She was trapped. I just assumed. You assumed? The judge continued, unimpressed. Miss Parker, is there any evidence to suggest the petitioner is the father? Her lawyer seemed to want to die. Jessica appeared pallid. I relaxed back in my chair, enjoying the entertainment by this point. Ethan was prepared to finish her off. Your Honor, we have strong reason to believe this child is not my client's. He showed out images from 2 months after Jessica and I split up, of her on vacation with another man, holding hands and kissing. Clear evidence that she had moved on. Then came the last nail in the coffin. Ethan slid medical records across the table. Additionally, we have subpoenaed Miss Parker's recent medical records, which show that her first confirmed pregnancy test was months after she and my client had last been together. Jessica's face wrinkled. Her lawyer looked at her, understanding she hadn't told him all of this. The judge gave a long sigh and shook his head. Miss Parker, this court does not tolerate dishonesty. Given the evidence, there is no justification for financial support. The prenuptial agreement stands. You will not receive alimony or further compensation. Boom! Jessica gasped, as if she had been physically struck. Your Honor, this hearing is over, the judge announced. Done. Jessica sat still, immobilized. The judge's remarks lingered in the air, but I could see it occurring in real time. Her mind searching for an escape. This was not how she expected today to go. According to her account of events, she was meant to cry, seem miserable, and leave with a large monthly check. Instead, she had been publicly exposed. Her lawyer stopped staring at her. He was staring at the floor, most likely re-evaluating every decision that had led him to take on this case. Meanwhile, Jessica was clutching the table's edge, as if she could somehow cling on to the remaining pieces of her plan. Then the tantrum began. Jessica's final desperate try. But Your Honor, Jessica shouted out in a high-pitched voice. This is not fair. I'm going to have a baby, and he can just walk away. The judge inhaled sharply and rubbed his temples. He was finished. Miss Parker, he stated firmly. This court does not render financial decisions based on emotional appeals. Your pregnancy has no legal bearing on this divorce until paternity is confirmed, which it has not, according to the evidence supplied. But the judge raised his hand. Enough! Jessica snapped. She whirled in her chair, swinging her head at me. Are you really going to do this to me? To your own child? There it was. The final bet. Even after being publicly humiliated, she continued to spread mistrust. The courtroom became silent. Then I gave a leisurely, pleased, vicious smile. You really want to do this, Jessica? I leaned forward and spoke calmly. Do you want to go on record accusing me of being the father? Because we can obtain a court-ordered paternity test straight away. Her face twitched. She had nothing. She knew she didn't have anything. Everyone else in the room felt the same way at that time. This time, the judge did not bother to react. He simply turned to the clerk. The journal is done. Jessica had lost everything. But it wasn't finished yet. The hearing ended, but I wasn't done watching her break down. I went out of the courtroom with Ethan beside me, my mother following a few steps behind. I half expected Jessica to slip out quietly, but I should have known better. She stormed out after me, heels clacking, face flushed, hands shaking. You're a monster, she snarled. You let me sit there humiliated. I gently turned, examining her up and down. I apologize, Jessica. Which part embarrassed you? The portion when you attempted to defraud the court, or the part where you knew I was 3 steps ahead? Her jaw clenched. You set me up. No, sweetheart, I replied, smiling again. You've set yourself up. I just let you walk in. She appeared to want to throw something at me, but then she attempted one more card. She turned to my mother. Are you really cool with this? What did he do to me? Mom hesitated and then crossed her arms. I'm not okay with what you did to him, she told me. You tricked us all once. Never again. Jessica's lips quivered. For a brief moment, I thought she may cry. Then comes the real explosion. I hope you rot, she exclaimed, moving nearer as if she intended to claw at me. "I hope you—" "Miss Parker." The voice sounded from behind her, a severe official tone. Jessica froze. 2 court officers had entered the hallway. "Come with us, please." Her head snapped around. "What? Why?" "The judge has recommended an inquiry into potential perjury and fraud," a police officer added. "You'll need to answer some questions." Her eyes widened. "Wait, no, that's not—" However, they were already leading her back into the courtroom. I let out a slow breath. Ethan touched my shoulder. "Well, that was satisfying." I smirked. "Yeah, it was." Jessica was hauled back to the courtroom. I did not follow. I did not need to. When the court personnel dragged her away, she was no longer my problem, but I made sure to follow up. Turns out the judge wasn't simply upset, he was making an example of her. Faking financial distress? Bad. Attempting to manipulate the court? Worse. Lying under oath? That is perjury. Her bogus claims meant she was now being investigated. The court not only dismissed her alimony request, but also noted her case for probable financial wrongdoing. She dug her own grave. Over the next few months, I learned bits and pieces. The judge fined her for wasting the court's time. Her lawyer dropped her immediately. Her attempt to apply for government assistance? Denied. It turns out they also need proof of paternity. What about the cherry on top? Her new boyfriend has dumped her. Apparently, once my lawyer showed those vacation images in court, the guy began doing the arithmetic. He discovered he wasn't the only one she had been with, and he wasn't sure he was the father anymore. I can only imagine the discourse. A few months following the trial, I received a text from an unknown number. "Jessica, I hope you're happy." I glanced at it for a second before typing back. "I am, thanks for asking." I then blocked the number. I did not need to hear from her again. She'd spent years attempting to manipulate, control, and milk me for everything I owned. But now she was alone. And for the first time in a long time, I was liberated. Now to the next story 7. Am I the asshole for moving out of our apartment knowing my fiancé and his mom can't afford it without me? Me, F29, and my ex-fiancé, M27, have been living together for about 1.5 years. Fiancé got his undergraduate degree, worked for a couple years and then decided to get an MBA, which is how he ended up in our city. We moved in together after he finished his MBA program. Fiancé is from the Midwest and his mom has always wanted him to move back. When he told her he was staying here, she was heartbroken. I went to college and got my degree in a STEM field. After I graduated, I got a job with my current company and moved to the city where we currently live. It's a big international company with multiple locations in the US and internationally. I love my job, I like the company I work for, and the pay is pretty good. All in all, a pretty good deal. During COVID, my office shut down and we all went WFH. After COVID, they decided not to reopen this office, so I've been 100% WFH since early 2020. I currently make considerably more than him, mainly because I've been working for 7 years and I'm in tech. I had been living by myself in a 1-bedroom apartment and just had my office set up in the living room since it was just me. When we moved in together, we decided to get a 2-bedroom apartment so I could use the extra room as an office. Because of this, I was paying 2/3 of the rent and he paid 1/3. We split everything else 50-50. So the problem started this past May. Fiancé's mom told him she wanted to move to our city to be closer to him. She asked if she could stay with us while she looked for a job and got settled. She's a teacher, so figured she'd be able to get a teaching job pretty quickly. Because of that, I didn't really mind her staying with us, as I figured it would just be for a couple months over the summer. Since I thought it would only be for a couple months, I moved my office into a corner of our bedroom and my fiancé bought a bed to put in the second bedroom. The problem is she never applied for any teaching positions and has been living with us for 6 months now. She and I have really been struggling with each other since she moved in. I can't make her understand that I work full-time. She constantly interrupts while I'm working, which is bad enough, but she even interrupts when I'm on team calls. She always asks me to take her places because she doesn't like to drive in our city. She has pretty outdated views of gender roles and is constantly giving me a hard time for not doing more around the house and making fiancé help with chores, do his own laundry, etc. The constant criticism and insults are just really wearing me down. And I hate having my office shoved in a corner of the bedroom. Back in September, I told my fiancé that since it looks like his mom is going to stay a while, we should split the rent 3 ways. He told me she can't afford that since she has to conserve money until she gets a job. I told him I wasn't happy paying extra for a bedroom I can't use, so finally he said we could do a 50-50 split. I could afford to pay the extra, But I hate the idea of funding her lifestyle. Every time I complain about her or the situation, he says he agrees but doesn't know what to do because he can't kick out his mom. And he won't talk to her about the way she treats me or how she behaves. When I ask what the long-term plan is, he just says he doesn't know. I've thought about giving him an ultimatum to tell her she has to leave, but I think he'd just end up resenting me for essentially putting him mom on the street. So one of my girlfriends is losing her roommate at the end of February. Our lease renews June 1st. I'm very strongly considering moving out of our current apartment and moving in with her. I can afford to pay part of the rent on our current apartment and also half the rent at my friend's apartment. It's not ideal, but I'm not a big spender, so it's doable. The issue is, if he and his mom aren't able to pay for 1/3 the rent each, there's no way they could cover the whole thing on their own. But I can't live like this anymore. So I'm pretty sure this is what I'll do, but I wanted to see if people thought I'd be the AH for leaving them like this. Comments. Comment 1. His mom is the biggest A because she specifically planned this. It isn't that she's had bad luck, she didn't even apply. Add in that she didn't respect your workplace and insults you. She's basically trying to be the matriarch of the house, while being a complete mooch. The biggest problem is your fiancé thought. This is just a glimpse of your future with a mama's boy. He's made it clear that he's okay with her walking all over you, and she's not leaving. You're going to end up as a third wheel in your own marriage. Comment 2, je suis d'accord. His mom is taking advantage, and your fiancé isn't setting boundaries. It's a big concern for the future, you deserve better. NTA. Comment 3, exactly this. OP, you're not leaving them, you're escaping a situation that was never fair to you in the first place. His mom didn't just end up staying, she chose not to apply for jobs, and your fiancé chose to let her. Meanwhile, you've been paying the majority of the rent, lost your office, and now you're stuck in your own home with someone who disrespects you daily. If he wanted to build a life with you, he would have had a plan for this months ago. Instead, you're the only one being asked to sacrifice. Time to choose yourself because they already have. Comment 4. And be prepared for them to be upset because they are losing their money bags. They were using you and had absolutely no respect for you. Neither one of them. If you don't leave, you will be the AH. Comment 5. I'm a teacher. An old, retired teacher. I could substitute teach every day this week if I wanted to do so. I still get requests to apt interview for both public school and private school jobs. MIL could work if she wanted to work. I'm in my late 60s and drive all over and in Mexico and Europe on vacation. She is needlessly helpless. Comment 6. Good news, you discovered your fiancé is a mama's boy before you got legally entangled. The price is 3 months of paying double rent. Sucks, but much cheaper than a divorce, alimony, child support and years of therapy because of dealing with that kind of MIL. Mommy wanted to prove her darling boy would pick her and take care of her. So she moved in and proved it, he won't stand up to her. Sadly, unless he gets some serious therapy and figures out how to unmesh, he's never going to. So tell him flat out, Mommy wins. She gets her whittle boy back, you will find a grown man. You'll pay your portion of the rent for the next few months, but you're letting the landlord know you will not be renewing and do not use your income for renewal for him and Mommy. I'm sorry you have to deal with this. You did what you could, but unless he wants to grow up, you're going to spend decades hearing how you don't cook right, clean right, raise your kids, spend money, vacation wrong, and have bad values. She, of course, knows better. Don't do that to yourself. And maybe, just maybe, this will make him realize he's got to get off Mommy's titty if he ever wants a life of his own. Update, 5 days later. I posted here last week about the situation I'm in living with my soon-to-be ex-fiancé and his mom. I started off trying to reply to everyone's comments and keep up, but honestly I just got completely overwhelmed with all the comments. First off, I want to thank everyone for their feedback and comments, even the ones that were kind of harsh. Actually, probably especially the ones that were kind of harsh. I really needed some tough love to make me realize that I was letting my STBX and his mom take advantage of me. The more comments I read, the more pissed off I got. Honestly, I think I'm more pissed at myself for allowing this to happen and not advocating for myself more. This past weekend I got my STBX alone so we could talk, which was actually harder than it should have been. BC, his mom always tries to tag along when we do anything. Going through all the comments everyone left and the PMs people sent really helped me decide how to approach this. And also, brought up a lot of good questions I should have thought of myself. Back to the discussion with the ex, I wanted to give him one more chance to pick us over his mom, not because I thought he would, but I just wanted to be able to tell myself I give him the opportunity. I explained again about how unhappy I am with the situation, how it's affecting my work because of her constant interruptions and just being unhappy and uncomfortable that I'm forced to work out of a corner in our bedroom. And I reminded him that until a few months ago I was paying the majority of the rent, and being that I make so much more than him, it's really my salary that keeps us all afloat. And I also brought up, again, the way she treats me and talks to me. And he replied the same way he has been. He agrees it's not right how she acts and that it's really uncomfortable for us all. WTF, I don't care if she's uncomfortable. Previously I would have dropped it there. But this time I told him how angry and disappointed I was that he let me pay for 2/3 of the rent when she first moved, and how unfair it was that I'm still paying for half when there are 3 people living there and she is the only one with her own bedroom. It was the same story, she has to conserve money since she doesn't have any income currently. Which brought up the question of where all her stuff went when she moved. What money does she use for incidentals? So evidently, when she got divorced, she asked for the divorce after my ex went off to college. It doesn't sound like her husband Woody X's dad wanted the divorce. His dad bought her out of the equity in their house. X didn't have any idea how much that was or how much is left. But until she moved here she was working full-time as a teacher and living in a small apartment, so she should not have had to tap into the divorce settlement money very much. Other than that, X didn't have much insight into her finances other than what she told him, that she has to conserve money. I told him straight up that I'm moving out before the end of the month. And from now on I'm only paying 25%. As some of the commenters pointed out, she has a whole bedroom while I have to share with a man-child. So she should have to pay twice as much, and after I move out I'm not paying for anything else. No utilities, no food, nothing other than rent. I have a pretty idea what his finances are like, and if he has to pay 75% of the rent all by himself, it's going to take a huge chunk of his net income. And after he pays utilities and buys groceries there won't be anything left for incidentals. Rent was due on the 1st, but it's not late until after the 5th, so he has 2 days to come up with the dollars. If he doesn't come up with it and I end up covering, then I'll reduce the amount I pay in future months. The only reason I'm going to keep paying any of the rent is even after I move out, I'm still on the hook. I talked to the leasing office and they explained that since X and I signed a single rental agreement together, e.g., one contract we both signed as opposed to 2 contracts we signed individually, we are both responsible for the rent. They don't care who actually pays as long as it gets paid. The only alternative would be if he agrees to sign a new lease by himself, or together with his mom. But in all likelihood he wouldn't be able to pass the credit check on his own, so I'm kind of stuck. I don't think he'll do anything stupid though, because he's going to need to find someplace to live after this, and a collection on his credit report wouldn't be good. I also told him that I'm going to find someplace to work during the day until I move so she can't bother me. My friend I'm moving in with said I could work there during the day since she and her current roommate have in-person 9 to 5s. I took her up on that for now. After living with his mom, I'm not about to overstay my welcome, so I'm going to find some other options that I can rotate through. Someone suggested checking out the public library, or if it comes to it I'll get a membership at one of those WeWork kind of places. Just in case, I brought my important papers, files, valuables, and my friend is storing them for me until I move in. He really didn't take it well. The surprising thing to me is that he was surprised by everything. He seemed really shocked that I wasn't prioritizing his mom. I really got the feeling that he sincerely believed I wanted to take care of her as much as him, and he kept saying stuff like, "What about my mom? What am I going to tell her? That's how she is, but we still need to help her," etc. He asked about our relationship and the engagement. I told him after I moved out I needed some space from him. In a few months, when we've both had some time, space to process what happened, if we both agree we can talk about the relationship. But he'd have to prove that he's going to have my back going forward and will set boundaries with his mom. I told him that just to avoid more drama, but I don't see a future in which we are together. I told him he needs to tell his mom because she's not my responsibility or problem, and she'll know something when I start moving my stuff out. He hasn't told her what's going on yet, but this weekend I'm going to start moving things so he doesn't have much time. My friend's current roommate starts a new job in another state on the 3rd, so in reality I can probably move in 2 to 3 weeks, just depending when she actually leaves. I don't expect him to do anything bad, other than sulk and complain, but if he does something stupid, or doesn't pay his part of the rent, the ace up my sleeve is I'll tell the leasing office his mom moved in, which is prohibited in the lease. Honestly, getting evicted would solve a lot of my problems right now, so it's a pretty valid threat, I think. Now that I've mentally and emotionally separated myself from him and his mom, I'm looking forward to her reaction when he tells her what's going on. If it gets too ugly, I'll find a cheap Airbnb or hotel or something. I've had some friends, including the one I'm moving in with, offer to let me couch surf for a few weeks, but I just can't do that to someone else. So, that's it. I'm leaving and I really don't care how that affects them. Comments. Comment 1. You're at the end of a long and painful process, but I'm sure that you will be better for it. Good luck. Comment 2. Dude should really just marry his mom. Comment 3. Notify your landlord in writing that you are moving out and to take you off the lease after June 1st. You wouldn't want to do nothing and accidentally trigger an automatic renewal. Oop, already did that. I did it before I went to talk to the front office and confirmed that they received it while I was down there. New update, 8 days later. Hey everyone, I've been getting a lot of requests for updates, so I wanted to let everyone know how it went when my ex's mom found out about me not covering all the rent and moving out. TLDR. It was kind of a shit show. But I'm moved out and I'm off the lease. Family is on the lease now and she and ex's dad are covering half the rent and STBX is covering the other half. Last week I started working out of my friend's apartment, the one I'm moving in with, so I didn't see my ex's mom on Monday. Tuesday around lunch she sent me a text asking where I was. I told her I was working and I'd be home late tonight. She replied that the ex told her I wasn't going to be contributing as much, so she had to loan him money for rent. That wasn't a surprise to me, so I just replied with a thumbs up emoji. I had plans with my friend and her roommate, who I'm also friends with, to go out for dinner and then get some drinks. So by the time I got home it was after midnight and my ex's mom was already asleep. The fun started Wednesday morning. I was getting ready to go to work at my friend's place when my ex's mom stopped me and said we need to discuss my financial situation. Then she went on a whole tirade about her having to cover my part of the rent, me making foolish choices by going out to dinner when I couldn't even pay rent, I was irresponsible with money and inconsiderate of the impact it had on others, blah blah blah. She went on to say that if she was going to have to pay my share of the rent that she expected me to do a better job of keeping on top of chores and keeping the apartment clean and organized. I told her I was moving out since obviously STBX hadn't told her yet. She seemed, I don't know, pleased with herself? All she had to say was, maybe that's for the best. When I got home that night, right off the bat, she wanted to talk. She said instead of me moving out, we could get a bigger apartment and she'd be willing to help by paying the difference between a 2-bedroom and a 3-bedroom. Then we could go back to the arrangement X and I had before she moved in, me paying 2/3 of the balance and him paying 1/3. Honestly, when she was saying this I think my brain vapor locked. She was making it sound like she was doing us a favor by offering to pay the increase in rent. Apparently this man-child who tells his mom literally every single thing about our lives and relationship hadn't bothered to tell his mom how much I was actually contributing. It seems like once she discovered X wasn't paying for everything like she thought, she wasn't as excited about me moving out. I tried to be polite and told her I'd already given notice to our apartment complex that I was moving out at the end of the month and already committed to move in with my friend. She kept pushing the issue and said if she was willing to pay the difference, I should just stay, because that would really be best for everyone. By then I was getting annoyed and told her that because of the way she has been acting and treating me I had no interest in living with her anymore. That's when the best line of this whole dumpster fire came out of her mouth. She said she was worried I was taking advantage of her son, and if we had told her about our financial arrangement she would have been more understanding of why I wasn't keeping up with the apartment. I told her maybe a good lesson from this is to try being nice to everyone in the future and not just the people you think can help you. And I asked her why she didn't help out more since she wasn't doing anything productive all day. She did not like either of those comments and it got pretty hostile with both of us yelling at each other. And to be fair, we both said some pretty awful things to one another. Finally I told her I was going to inform the rental office that she had been living there contrary to the lease agreement because getting evicted would be worth it to see her living on the street. I grabbed my laptop and went to my friend's. I didn't even bother packing an overnight bag. Next afternoon, Thursday, my ex texted me and said he had added his mom to the lease effective the first of the month and that she and his dad, I have no idea how that poor man got roped into this, would pay half the rent and X would pay the other half. I confirmed with the property manager that I was off the lease and didn't have any further obligation. I got it in email so I have a record. I put disconnect orders in for the utilities under my name and told him to call and set up accounts under his name. I'm going to lose the damage deposit, it goes to whoever is living there when lease ends, but it's a small price to pay to be free. On the way home I stopped and got a bunch of boxes to pack my stuff up. She was pretty hostile when I got home and when she saw how much I was taking she got worse. I ended up taking Friday off to finish packing and on Saturday got some friends to help move stuff to my new place. I'm going to pay my friends some rent for the next 2 weeks until they move out. They didn't want me to, but I'm not going to stay in someone's home and not contribute. If nothing else, living with my ex and his mom taught me that. Last night my ex and I got together and talked for the first time since Saturday. He said his mom is staying until June when the lease is up, then she's moving back to their hometown. According to him, she just really didn't like living here and that's why she didn't try to find a job. Then he asked how long a break I thought we should take. A few commenters gave me a hard time for stringing him along, So I was brutally honest and told him I could not be with someone that allowed others to treat me the way he allowed his mom to treat me, and that I hoped he learned to stand on his own and establish some boundaries. He looked like he was going to cry and just got up and left. As far as I'm concerned, this whole thing is over and done. I'm going to call it a learning experience and be glad I found out how awful my ex's mom was before we got married. The thing that amazes me is the amount of damage this woman leaves in her wake and how utterly oblivious she is. She destroyed our engagement and relationship, is leaving ex in a much worse financial situation, pushed back her ex-husband's retirement by I don't know how many years, since now he likely has to pay off the mortgage, or second mortgage, he had to get to pay her half of the equity. And she made my life hell for 6+ months, and she's walking away completely unscathed. According to my ex, she's going back to her hometown and picking up her old teaching job. I'm thinking about going to visit my parents next week and working from their house. I want to tell them how boring and undramatic they are and how I'm so grateful for that and love them for it. LOL. Comments. Comment 1. Always cut toxic people out of your life. Nuclear missile dodged. Good on you. I hope the old bat thinks of you every day she gets dressed for work. Comment 2. Wee. Glad you got out. He needed to hear the harsh truth of not coming back to him. He did this to himself when he didn't back you up. Who wants to be with a spineless jellyfish? Oop. Honestly, I was intentionally kind of a bitch. He's complicit in torching our relationship, but I did love him. I was worried if I wasn't blunt with him he'd try to talk me into trying again, and I wanted to close that door for good. Now to the next story. 8. Am I the asshole for denying my ex the chance to be a father after he abandoned me and our baby, and now insists on re-entering our son's life 16 years later? Original post, January 19, 2025. Throwaway. So get your "this is fake because new account" comments out early. I, 32F, had a baby boy when I was 16. Yes, I know how that sounds. No, we weren't careful. Judge me all you want on that front, I've dealt with that for years. Mike, 33 million, was my boyfriend then, and when I found out about my pregnancy, he did a disappearing act with help from his family. Something future college star, something. My parents were always blunt. What happened next was my choice. After a lot of thinking, and deciding abortion just wasn't for me, I respect that right, I'm not here to debate it, it was just not for me, I chose to give up the baby for adoption. My parents knew a super sweet couple that were looking to adopt. We met, and I just knew they were the right people. This turned from a teen mistake to an almost surrogacy. I started homeschooling to finish my education and to have a rest. The adoptive parents were with me for everything and even paid for most of the medical costs. The adoptive mother was a teacher, so she helped me with my schoolwork and to prepare for college. They were present for the birth and I refused to hold the baby. Instead, his actual mother did. And it was just right. I've stayed in the baby's life in a distant position as a special aunt. Well, he's no longer a baby and he knows who I am, but his mom is the same woman that raised him and I continue to be his special aunt. The only change is now he knows who to call if he needs a kidney. His sense of humor is like mine, go figure. We talk maybe once in a blue moon, which in all honesty is the best. He's happy and I don't regret giving him up to have a happy life. For my part, I married 6 years ago. My husband Aaron, 44 million, was divorced in good terms with Bella, 40 million. They have 2 children together. A boy that is 16 and a girl that is 19. Aaron made it clear since we began dating that his kids' approval was important and that Bella was part of his life forever. Not as a spouse but as a friend and mother to his children. I also told Bella and him about my teen pregnancy. Well, to begin with the kids, my stepdaughter and I get along well. She's obviously closer to her mother, but she still does girls' days with me every so often. It's more like friends though. My stepson is incredibly close to me. He calls me his other mom and always asks me to be present for important events. We bonded when his childhood dog passed away, as my cat died about the same time. Bella and I? We're best friends. I know people have complicated relationships with their partner's exes, but we always show respect to each other. I never tried to take her place. I know Aaron and her shared something special long before I was in the picture. That's their history. And I am a stepmom, not a mom. Her place in the kid's life is not up for competition. The reason for this background is that the whole mess with Mike started when I took my stepson to a medical appointment. It wasn't serious, though he did have to use anesthesia. Aaron and Bella both couldn't get the day off. They tried, but their jobs are on call and they cannot easily take time off. So I went on my own to be my stepson's support. I didn't recognize Mike as one of the doctors. His real name, both first and last name, are incredibly common and it has been years. Not to mention my priority was being my stepson's support and everything else was secondary. After my stepson was done, he was a bit out of it as expected. I was setting him up in the car and making sure he was comfortable when Mike came over. He told me he had been thinking about me and our son for so long, and he was glad our boy was okay. It really took me a few minutes for my brain to click on what was going on, and he kept on rambling about apologies and how he wasn't ready to be a father. Blah blah blah. Eventually I just sighed and loudly said, "This is not the baby I was pregnant with. I gave him up for adoption after I gave birth. I am a stepmother." My loopy stepson chimed in with, "Other mom." I had to hold back a smirk to be honest. Mike was stunned by that and it gave me time to catch him up on the important details. I gave up the baby. He knows what happened and why I gave him up. I married a man with 2 children. I am happy and don't want him in my life. And no, I won't give him contact information for the adoptive family. He is 16 years too late. That was the end of it and I got into my car to get my stepson home to rest. Since then Mike found me on social media and has been painting this sob story about me denying him a chance to be a father. How I was a poor mother that threw away her child to raise someone else's children. I'm basically the she-devil apparently. Most of our former classmates that saw the post reminded him that he left me. Some of his HS friends even pointed out he laughed about leaving me pregnant. I didn't know that part. A few of his relatives have reached out to bash me about taking Mike's chance to be a father. That it made me a poor Christian. I'm not. I'm Jewish to begin with. A few friends did tell me it was a bitch move to give the baby up without telling Mike. I don't personally think I was in the wrong, but in case I decided to leave the judgment to the internet masses. So, Reddit, AITA? Clearing something out. The adoptive parents and bio child have a phone number to contact Mike's parents if they want. I have no say if they do or not. I just won't give Mike any information on them. Some of OP's comments. Commenter, NTA hi, therapist here. Seems like it was the right decision for everyone involved. Especially Mike, who clearly shouldn't be anywhere near children given his full lack of impulse control and empathy. As a fellow Jewish lady, I recommend laughing at the poor Christian comments. OP, my mom loves them. I'm in a mixed household with dad being Jewish and mom being Catholic. My mom laughs every time I get a new one the hardest. Commenter, I mean, they can be really funny depending on who's saying it. Also, who are these friends calling you a bitch? They don't sound like friends. OP. They are more conservative friends. I say friend loosely. We're in the same groups. Commenter. These people are fucking psycho. Block block block. Your bio kid might decide for himself to try and find his bio dad one day, but it's your job to defend his privacy until then. And make sure his decision is informed. He knows that his bio dad is a complete ass. OP. I told him everything when his parents decided it was time to tell him who I was really. I didn't make Mike into a villain, just said he left after I told him I was pregnant and never reached out. He's been clear that while I am his biological mother and Mike is his biological father, he doesn't see either of us as parents. I am his aunt and Mike is a stranger. Commenter. Anta. TF. Also, I'm not judging you for the age gap, but I'm definitely judging Mike. Tell him if he and his friends don't leave you alone that you'll report him to the medical board. Also, maybe ask your son if he wants Mike's contact info, but warn the parents he's bad news. It's your birthday song choice, not yours. Editor's note. This commenter thought Mike was 33 when OOP was 16. He was 17 and OOP clarified that later. OOP. He's had Mike's info for years. Mainly via Mike's parents. I think he called them once and Mike wasn't around or something. I got the story secondhand so I don't know the details. Funny comment about anesthesia. Apparently I sang opera really badly when my wisdom teeth were removed. My stepson and I had a debate about why our dog should go to school in his place. Commenter, consult a lawyer about him talking shit about you online. Medical board? OP, in consideration. It hasn't damaged my character per se considering he's being called out publicly, but him approaching the hospital was weird. We're right now way too busy with another surgery on the schedule so legal stuff is on the back burner. And we are going to a different hospital. Commenter. Warn the adoptive parents about the situation, they have a right to know and can protect the child. OOP. Already done. They do live in another state so that gives them some space. Commenter. One thing? Knowing nothing about how this works, I assume you were able to get Mike's parental rights terminated given that he left. If not, I wonder if it makes sense to give the adoptive family a heads up that he's coming out of the woodwork. OP. This was a tough situation because he wasn't around and no one in his family willingly gave a DNA sample to establish parenthood. The judge that did the adoption could have demanded it, but she decided for the good of the baby and myself to just terminate both of our rights. And then the baby was adopted. I was basically deemed unfit and the father was not able to be contacted, and the court did try really hard to get him. To another commenter, it wasn't done with his consent. He was MIA. When the adoption process began, we tried to reach out and his family didn't even hold a conversation. The judge involved tried to have the courts contact him and he didn't respond either. Eventually the abandonment time frame was hit and his rights were terminated for abandonment. Mine were willingly terminated since I presented myself as an unfit mother. One more commenter. This was a pain to do. It mainly fell down on abandonment. We had to prove we tried to contact the father, the court had to try to contact the father, and we had to wait for a set time requirement. I just had the right judge that understood I wasn't prepared to be a mother and decided to set things appropriately. Their relationship. Oh, I don't mind it at all. I wanted him to never see me as his mom. I wanted him to love his family. I'm happy beyond the reasons that his life is great because I am not in it beyond a call here and there. He's an amazing young man and it's because he has amazing parents. I do get moments of pain here and there, and then I remember this kid had the best possible life. I wasn't good for him. And he wasn't good for me. It's a sad reality. I don't regret it and I'm glad I was able to bring him for his parents to have him in their lives. Mike was one of the doctors for your stepson's surgery? He wasn't one of our doctors. Just a doctor in the hospital. I spent like 2 hours in the waiting room so I suspect he recognized me. His name was on a plaque with all the doctors' names and I didn't even put 2 and 2 together. I should have, I was just stressed and not really thinking. Commenter, I'm sorry, I reread this 3 times looking for the part where you said you and your family moved away and changed all your identities. Nope, I don't see that anywhere. So, this college star and his scumbag family knew exactly where you were and how to find you for the last 16 fucking years. And yet you're the monster who denied him a chance to get to know his son and be the dad he was destined to be. Oh, that's just fucking rich. What a bunch of complete asswipes. Don't let him or his douchebag family anywhere near your son or his adoptive parents. Oop, I didn't even go out of state for college. Went to the local university in town. And this isn't a massive city either. Update post, February 5, 2025, 17 days later. This is probably the one and only update I'll be doing. Because to be honest, I got other things to do and I have my main Reddit account for lurking. I'm going to start with the important matter. A lot of people were worried about my biological kid and what he wished for when it came to Mike. Well, I got his permission to post this. He spoke to Mike once a few days after I told him where he could find Mike. I won't share all the details, only the final decision. There won't be any more contact between them. The kid doesn't want a second dad and Mike wasn't willing to be in his life unless he had the position of dad. So he's going no contact with Mike. There was more to it, but it's very personal and I feel it's not my place to share it. The kid and I will continue to have a relationship as aunt and nephew. And he knows whatever he needs medically, I'll always be first in line to give blood, kidney, etc. For those wondering why Mike is so big into contact with the kid, I found out a few details via his friends. Mike can have more kids. He just hasn't had a stable relationship in years. Which I can believe since I finally had enough and decided to accept going to have coffee with him to get some things squared away. My husband came of course, but he sat at another table to let me deal with it. I asked him to. The conversation was a shit show, to be honest. Mike brought me flowers and chocolate-covered strawberries, my old favorites. He treated it all like some date. I nipped that bud immediately. I introduced my husband and told him we were very much in love and happy, so I don't appreciate any attempts at unwanted romance. Once we sat down, he started by telling me what I knew about him having failed relationships. That he felt no woman could meet his standards for a wife and mother to his children since he already saw me as that. He claims he feels guilty for choosing college over me and our baby. He was well aware of the court dates regarding custody and that I was trying to put the baby up for adoption. When he saw me taking care of my stepson, he thought I had chickened out of giving the baby away. Seeing me be all caring for our baby boy made him think how great it would be if the 3 of us could be a family, and maybe have a bigger family down the road. He had the gall to ask me if I would consider divorcing my husband and try to fight for custody of our son. I have to admit, I laughed in his face. I probably was overly cruel, but I had years of stress, heartache, and judgmental encounters to drop on him. I told him all I saw in him was a coward. A coward that instead of staying to make adult decisions decided to run with help of mommy and daddy. That any love I had for him died the day I had to push out a full human being, and instead of knowing I had support from him, there was a big empty spot where the dad was supposed to be. That I almost ruined my life and had to throw away prom, senior pictures, and even graduation, because I was far too pregnant to party, appear in the yearbook or walk onto stage to get my diploma. He got to party and enjoy life while I had to fight tooth and nail for an inch of respect, yet we both had unprotected sex. The only difference is his DAC wasn't big enough to pop a baby out or satisfy a woman to begin with. That was a bit mean, but not sorry. After I calmed down, I simply told him I had a happy life with a man that loves me. Great stepkids are the greatest gift. A best friend who lets me be a stepmom to her children. A nephew who I adore and who, despite our history as biological mother and child, he still loves me as his special aunt rather than hates me. My family is perfect because he's not part of it, and I have no intentions to live in his fantasy. And that I can't wait to get pregnant with my husband's child to add to that perfection. I also told him to leave our biological kid alone. He has made his choice and it is up to him if he ever reaches out for Mike. And also let him know I would be making a formal complaint to his hospital for his harassment. Good thing my husband took screenshots, because by the time we got home, Mike had deleted all the posts. A lot of his former friends did repost screenshots making fun of him. The silver line in all of this is that I have reconnected with my high school classmates, and to be honest, they are great people. Seems Mike is in a handful that stayed in his school hypes mindset. It's been about 3 days and no signs of Mike. My husband did get the biggest ego boost when he overheard me going off on Mike and has been insufferable, in a good way. So, there's mostly good news. Hopefully one of these days we'll get even more good news, since we actually are excited at the idea of having a baby together. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter. Regarding him asking you to divorce your husband and fight together for our son, outside of getting physical, there's practically no overreaction to that. OOP. I almost got physical, to be honest. But I had my nails just done. He wasn't worth breaking a nail. Commenter. Very few things are worth breaking a nail, but Han, breaking one to hurt that bastard would have been one of those things. OP. Yeah, but he's not worth the $150 bill. He wasn't even worth the $14 bill at the cafe. OP explains. It was an anniversary gift from my stepdaughter. Normally my nails are like, 40 maybe? XD commenter. Of course he didn't pick up the check. Oh, we left before and I paid my part and my husband's. Don't know if he paid his. Commenter. Did he at least leave those strawberries for your husband to feed to while you recline in bed? OP. Nah, we left them on the table for him with the flour. My husband bought me my current favorite, macadamias covered in chocolate. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.